thought distortions, these sneaky, inaccurate patterns of thinking and believing, are very common and part of human nature, but do not underestimate their potential to wreak havoc on our wellness. This is especially true of common thought distortions that hijack us when our brains are driven by the fight, flight, or freeze of grief. If you missed my last video where I explored those survival states, I will link to it at the end of this video. I'm McRogers. Welcome back. If you are already part of our Grievolution community, and hello if this is your first time joining us, please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so you can join in each time we explore all things grief and how to do grief differently. Thought distortions are these tiny little seemingly true filters that get trapped in our brains. They cause us to view reality in an inaccurate and often negative way. There are many recognized thought distortions: overgeneralizing, discounting the positive, jumping to conclusions, mind reading and fortune telling, catastrophizing and minimizing, emotional reasoning, labeling and mislabeling, personalization. However, today we're going to focus on three different distortions, the top three distortions that I see most frequently in my therapy practice and ones that I have personally experienced myself at different points in my life and my grief. Thought distortion number one: all or nothing, black and white thinking. Grief tightens up this boundary. This distortion manifests as an inability to see shades of gray. So in other words, we see things in terms of extremes. Something is either good or it is awful. We believe that we are either healing today or that we are a mess. This filter can foster a fixed, pessimistic view of everything around us by focusing only on the negative. When we are grieving, nothing seems positive, so this can reinforce this distorted thinking. I often ask people to look for moments that suck less. This is a way to challenge this distorted thinking. It is a way to invite in wiggle room of gray zones and bust the limitations of black and white thinking. It is a really challenging filter when we are grieving and the world seems like shite. Thought distortion number two: should statements. Another particularly damaging distortion is the tendency to make should statements. Should statements are statements that we make to ourselves about what we should do, what we ought to do, or what we must do. They can also be applied to others as well, imposing a set of expectations that will generally not be met. When we hang on too tightly to our should statements about ourselves, the result is often guilt and that we cannot live up to those should statements. Oftentimes we get into trouble being with our grief because we have some wildly fixed idea of where we should be in our grief. We should be strong. We should move on. We should be grateful for all that is good in our lives. We should have done more. We should have known. We should have met others' expectations of us. So speaking of others, also when we cling to our should statements about others, we are generally disappointed by their failure to meet our expectations. This often leads to anger and resentment. We can also fall prey to the belief that others should know how to support us, that they should know what we need, and this can just be such a trap for disappointment. Thought distortion number three: control fallacies. A control fallacy manifests as one of two mixed beliefs. Number one, that we are in complete control of ourselves and our surroundings. Or, number two, that we have no control over our lives and are helpless victims of fate. Both beliefs are false and damaging, and both are equally inaccurate. No one is in complete control of what happens to them, and no one has absolutely no control over their situation. This is often the first filter that is shattered where grief is concerned. If we had control, we could have saved our person. We could have prevented their addiction. We could have seen the depression. We could have stopped the accident. We could have prevented the illness and the pain. When we learn we are not in control, we often go to the complete opposite. Grief brings us to our knees, and then we begin to believe that we have no control whatsoever. In my therapy practice, I often ask people that when the grief is so overwhelming, as it usually is, that it is so important to bring it all down to the simplest level of control. Drink your water, eat handfuls of nutrition, move your body, let yourself cry, have a shower, step outside, take big breaths and square your shoulders. Each of these is your place of power. They are reminders and practice of what you do have control over. Use them to challenge the control fallacy that you have the no control that grief invites in. Work to find your sense of control from your power, not from your fear. So what do you think about these thought distortions and grief? Let us know in the comments below which one or did all of them show up with your grief. Was it black and white thinking? Was it the should-haves, or was it the control fallacies that caught you in your grief? Please share and support one another in the comments below. As you challenge these natural thought distortions while grieving, I send to you kind thoughts, kind words, and a kind heart. Please share and like this video so that YouTube knows that grief needs a voice. And up next is my video about the impact of grief on our brains. Thank you and take good care.